Okay. So let me welcome Stephane Dufau from the Laboratoire de Psychologie Cognitive, who is brought to us courtesy of CNRS International Research Labs in Crossing.
Yeah, Adelaide.
So, and he's asked me not to give a long introduction about him because he'll do it himself.
Yeah, that's it. I got a final slide that explains it all. So, oh, sorry. Pardon? Yeah, that's fine. So I got a final slide that explains it all. So I'm a research engineer in the cognitive psychology lab back in France at Aix-Marseille University. So I work for the CNRS. A bit higher. It should be high. Is it better like that? Yes. Yeah, I'm gonna speak with a louder voice. So CNRS stands for Centre National de la Recherche Scientifique, so the National Research Center. And I'm on a long-term scientific mission at Queensland Brain Institute, University of Queensland, as an honorary senior research fellow. So the title, forgot about it. It's how reading brain works. And actually, follow up on this presentation that was fantastic this morning. Came to my mind two initiatives that were published quite recently. So from the reading brain to reading the brain. And so it's cortical organoids and brain on a dish. I'm not sure that you come across this one, but this is just amazing. This is no pointer, that's fine. The cortical organoids, they grown organically, and it's a self-organizing structure, three-dimensional, and it's great for understanding computation in at the cell level. So meaning that you can probe with electrodes this kind of little brains. It's just great. It's published in Nature in 2020, and now in Australia they do that. They do that in UQ, and my guess in Melbourne too, and probably here too in Adelaide. And the second initiative that is just amazing, this one, published in 2022. It's a dish brain. So it's a brain on a dish on a multi-electrode array. So it can sense and you can stimulate this little array. It's 800,000 cells on this array, and you can see these little cells over there, and the soma of the neurons and the axons here. So it's not a computer, but the properties are just incredible. Incredible speed, low power consumption, and flexibility. So biological computation that is far, but not that far actually, because people are working on that, and there's a lot of excitation. It's great, these little guys, to investigate learning rules. So going back to not reading the brain, but reading brain. So the outline of the talk is, I will speak about the core concept, which is will take probably a quarter of an hour. And then I will go for some experimental studies and modeling, and I will give a final application on text simplification, how it helped children back in France with reading difficulties read better. So going back at a really small basic level. So definition of a language. So I'm speaking about language, natural languages like English. So language is a structured system of communication, and it's mainly spoken in between people, and it's transmitted through direct communication. And in some situation, and for some languages too, there is an extra step that is employed, and it is writing, when you need to have a trace for history in between people, from what is said to what is read. And writing is a definition. It's its definition is a medium of human communication which involves the representation of a language. And here the representation is fundamental because it got to be a fair representation, obviously. And why it is fundamental? Because representation means that you need to have a meaningful code to represent language. And this has two phases. There is the encoding phase, the writing phase, so what is coded, and there is the decoding phase. What I will talk about, it is reading. And here on the right, you have all the different, not embeddings, but encodings that were employed by humans, from the pictograms to the alphabet that represent phonemes via graphemes. So letters, logograms, ideograms, all that nice scripting. So is there a biological origin of written material? So this one is unsolved, but there are theories about it. What we can see from all the different writing system right from the birth of writing. And so it was not only in Iran, Iraq, in Mesopotamia, it was also invented. It was invented several times, more than once in the world. So in China, in Indus, etc. What we can see in India, what we can see is that it's always an align and order sequence of signs. So it's a property. And so I asked myself why this is the case. And you can see here, it is not an aligned order, but just to show you the evolution of writing a script in a cuneiform. I found it so on Wikipedia. It's a great source of finding images, and it comes from actually the University of Chicago. So there is a representation of a head, and then a rotated head. Then there is the abstraction up through this little sign here, and it goes from a logographic representation to a syllabic one, and took several thousand, a few thousand of years. So Proto-Chinese here, script for India, in Mesoamerica too, in Mexico. So the alignment of letters, you can find it also in Braille. So, and why such alignment? So the two hypotheses is that it favors, of course, letter binding. Letter binding is a fundamental properties for sure, because if you got two letters too far apart, they doesn't form a single percept. They form two percepts that are different. So it's not a word, it's just, this is two letters. And it favors some reading automaticity. This is an important concept too. And the definition of automaticity is that the ability to rapidly and effortlessly accurately recognize or decode written words that comes with a great deal of reading practice. Practice is important here. So reading is a world in itself. Actually, we call so it's core component of literacy, so reading and writing literacy. And the funny bit is that when you speak English, you talk about literacy, which is a higher structure. And when you talk in French about literacy, it's alphabetization. It makes reference to the lower structure. So it's a research topic, both at the individual and the society level. And my stand here is to how the brain recognizes letters and words. And within the first seconds, I would say, within the first second and a bit beyond, and how to help children read better. In a lab, cognitive psychology lab, or in a neuroscience, cognitive neuroscience lab, this is the way we investigate how people read. There is people that sit, participant in front of a computer, and we display words, the answer on the keyboard. We have means of recording electrophysiology, the electrical signal on the surface of the head, on the skull. There is also a camera that can look at where you are looking on the screen. So this is nice. Experimenting and then modeling for sure. They came first with a box analysis at the birth of the cognitive psychology, and now we use artificial neural networks, but simple ones, not the big one that you have seen and witnessed today, and also mathematical models, both in terms of formulation, like a mathematical equation or in a statistical model. Whoop, maybe. So I talked about automaticity and learning to read, actually. And when you think about that, when you measure the reading speed in children, you find that they spend mostly a second per word. So it's really, I would say, letter by letter reading. And then when you train yourself and you practice sufficiently after a few years, probably from 6 years old up to 11, 12. At 12, you got the reading speed of an adult. Then you spend 200 milliseconds per word. And usually it's 1 second per word. Here on the left, there will be the fixation point where a dyslexic child, a child with dyslexia in German spend this time. So you can see the point of regard, I say the fixation. So there's a lot of fixation per line of words. It's not sentences, lines of words. And in a neurotypical adult, so I blurred it just to see, and you will see that this adult spend less time in sentences. So this is done by an eye tracker. So some examples now of what I'm talking about. So we, the person who was referring to has left, but to the order of letters earlier on. So here on the thing is that it doesn't matter in what order the letters are in a word. Well, maybe in a word are. Or jumbled letters, you can do it also with words. You can transpose words. This is transpose effect. There is also an effect on reading that is called the missing letter effect. I'm not sure that you have seen this effect. It's a funny effect. If you count, we can play this game. If you count the number of F in this little text upright, and I will do a little, this text. I will do. So how much do you have? So who counts the 3, 4, 4? 4 for you? How much? 6 for you? Or 6? You are sure? 4? Yeah, so usually people say, oh yeah, so I see 3 Fs. Fair enough. So count again. So say, oh no, I can see 3, 3, 3. So count again, and actually there is 6 Fs. There are 6. That's funny. You're missing letters. Yeah. So this is a really funny effect because it all comes from the offs, and the offs they have a functional. Those are functional words. They have a fundamental role in the understanding, the comprehension of a text, and yet you're totally blind of the vision of it. So it's integrated in your brain, but it's non-conscious. So it's a funny effect. So, and there is also probably this one too that plays with the spacing in between letters and lines, and I find it easier to read, but some people don't. These things. So believe me, the same font and the same letter size. So I'm not sure that I can read better on the right. So you see, so it's based on the crowding. The more the letters are crowding, the more you're blurred. The vision is impaired, and you lose the ability to understand the text. And the last effect, which is an old effect, is that you're better at identifying inner letter, like the R here, when it is embedded in a word, rather than in a non-word. We call it non-word. It's a random sequence of letters, which is meaningless. So you're better in identifying the R in card than in CRUD. And so this word superiority effect here was first reported in 1886. And basically it represents the shift between two sides of the psychology. There is the psychology more philosophical with rhetorical argument. And then after that, there were more experiments. So with people in labs and people and psychologists measured things. First in a paradigm like a stimulus response. So with what came after an internal medium, and the internal medium had evolved into the concept of mind, what we call this nowadays in cognitive science. And you have all the components here of cognitive science that you have, and mind is a mental representation and processes, what we'll talk about right now. So reading, what is encoded here? So it's table. If you read table, that's fine. There's no trick here. And actually, it is a written word, and it's like an image that we can precisely describe. So I call it a controlled image versus natural image that is more complex to describe. It's composed of a limited number of known elements. So basically in English, 26 letters, Latin-based, with physical properties like font, color, visual complexities, visual complexity of each letter. And they are arranged in a recurrent order, like QU or ION. You can see phoneme morpheme also in this thing. There is orthographic properties. When you see table, you also see able and you see cable. You can't help but see cable. And here again, the unknown word, which has orthographic properties similar, neighbor to table, which is table. I hope it's a real known word. Not sure. There are sublexical properties too. Syllables, morphing affixes like here TA and BLE. There are also lexical properties, frequency in the language, frequency of use, and you have my guess is that I can't see here and you can't see either. So I think it's going back from 1800 to 2000, and this is the frequency of usage in a language. And there's also semantic properties like the meaning of words. So all packed within this little guy. So it's quite a lot of properties. And we can add some more for sure. There are phonological properties. I will not talk about that. There are grammatical properties, emotional properties too. And what is not coded in a word is more linked to spoken properties like the prosody, the accent, the intonation, the prosody being on the melody of a language. So the key concept here that I want to emphasize is that all the properties doesn't unfold at the same moment in our brain, fortunately enough. Otherwise, it will be a real catastrophe, I guess. So it unfolds in a cascaded process. So they all form part of a hierarchy. And so the words have a different mental representation, and it evolves in time, all that within a second. And this change in mental representation, it's biologically grounded. So from the visual area to the language area. So I would call biologically grounded on brain structure and connectivity. Here you have artificial neural networks. So we were presenting an image of life here, which is a written word, and we were collecting the final answer of the artificial neural network. It's called the lexical decision. When if you present life, you respond yes, it's a word, you respond on the right button, and if it is a non-word, you respond on the left button. So it's a decision. We'll speak more about it after that. So this is the core concept of reading, I would say, reading in a psychological perspective. Now, a few experimental studies. what we do, so I talk about it, we display words. So it's always in control condition. In a particular group of individuals, we do that, we display in children, we display in adults, in other adults, in children with dyslexia. We usually manipulate 1 or 2 factors, probably 3 sometimes, from time to time, and everything else being equal. We collect behavioral responses for sure, and we analyze the results with statistics. And here you have an example of what we did. It's called subliminal repetition priming protocol. So subliminal because there is one presentation of a word that is non-conscious. It's 33 millisecond presentation. So it's just like a flash. You don't see it. You see it, sorry, but you're not conscious of seeing it. And there is the repetition is between the 2 words that are displayed, a pair of words, which is a prime and a target. And this pair of words, the prime target, can be either repeated words or non-repeated, related or non-related. And the manipulation that we did here is that the prime was either centrally presented just like the target, or the prime was presented 1 letter to the left or 1 letter to the right. So the results here are quite interesting, I would say, is that you have in black the related condition, and in red the unrelated condition, and you have a relatedness repetition effect when the word is centrally presented. Here, this is the map of an electrical activity on the scalp. O2 is there, FP2 is there, and you have this effect of relatedness only for the central condition. You got no effect here when it is on the left, and no effect when it is displaced on the right, while at 250 milliseconds, so 100 milliseconds after this effect here, the location doesn't count anymore. You got the same effect wherever the prime is. It means that at 150 milliseconds, here, all these representation of a word are different, and at 250, all these representations are equal. We talk about location-dependent code on the right and location-independent code on the left. On the left for the 150 millisecond, and independent location-independent on the right. So this is how we, well, clever people thought about it, really, and they came to a way to code this phenomenon. So they called it an alphabetic array here. This is location-dependent representation, and what they call a relative position map. So it's open biogram coding, and it's location-independent in the sense that you do not place the letter at a fixed position. You just have a pair of letters that just say, okay, the S is on the left of the I, the S is on the left of the L. And we can call it now the bag of diagram if you want. And it makes me think of the question that we had earlier on with the typos, that the learning of an artificial neural network that we're presenting with typos. And I just asked myself, what if you do not, the tokenization problem that was being asked, what if instead of presenting Shi and Raz, you present the open diagram of Shiraz? Maybe you would not have to train your neural net on such a weird group of typo that you create artificially. So who knows? So maybe there is a way to explore here. So the current views on hierarchical processes, this is what we published years ago for this guy here on the left, from the retina to what we call a template of a single letter with all the different forms and all the different size of the A. So there is a template of the A that you have in your brain. And for the vision at a, I would say, a higher level. Well, all these different representation that goes from the vision to, you can see all the features here, to the language area. And to simplify, it's really, well, you go from the percept to the identification phase and the comprehension. So yet again, another hierarchy, just the same. So now I want to emphasize what are the computational aspects in reading. So we saw a bit of processing of letters and words. I will talk about the decision part when you decide whether it is a word or a non-word. There is a model for that. In the data analysis a bit, in the acquisition of reading tool, we can speak about that. And from this layer, that multi-layer network, real network that is displayed here, you can add many other layers. And if you want to investigate whatever, if you want to investigate the syllable effect, you put a syllable representation within your network and you try to model what happens, and usually it works. So the core concept that have been employed in the last 40 years now, and still the same model that is employed, is the interactive activation model. So I'm not sure that you have heard about it, but for us, it's a big model. So it comes with really simple equation that you have on the right. And so for sure, there is a hierarchy. There are several nodes that are all activated. There is excitation, inhibitory effects from different layers. And it was published first with the feature layer of a letter layer, and an orthographic layer. So you have the fundamental principle of interactive activation here. There is a lexical competition. For example, if you present blur to the network, blur, the letter of blurs activate also competitors, orthographic competitors, just like blue. And as blue is super frequent, well, more frequent than blur, then there is a competition in between the two, and the activation of blur is slowed down. And so blue has an effect on the activation of blur, but if you present blue, the activation is more steep. So there is less competitive, less competition in the recognition of blue. And here I add, but probably I will talk more about it. So it's modeling work that we did between the feature level and the letter level, but I will talk about it later. So hierarchical view of reading in action. So this is an experiment that we published just recently. It's all about decisions, binary decision, two alternative first choice task. So there is an alphabetic decision. You present either a symbol left response or letter right response, a lexical decision, word non-word, and a sentence grammatical decision. Either the sentence you present is grammatical or agrammatical, ungrammatical. And so the most crucial aspect, and now humanity doesn't make sense. So you press left. There is a fourth task, which is image categorization. It was just to partial out the effect of the decision, left and right, of the other tasks. So what we observed in this experiment is that when you do the reaction times, you have the distribution of the reaction times here, all the different tasks. You correlate intra-subject, meaning that each subject did all the tasks. You got a vector for 50 subjects, vector 50 measure of mean reaction time for the lexical decision, grammatical decision, alphabetical, and the non-reading task. And they correlate each other at a high level. But if you do partial correlation controlling for the non-reading task, at this time, you lose a correlation between the grammatical decision task and the alphabetical decision task, meaning that on the hierarchy here, you still have this correlation between letter and word, a correlation between word and sentence, but you lose the correlation between letter and sentence. Another way of seeing that is that words are fundamental to our ability to read. And there is a computational aspect that is really strong here, is that if in a model, let's say in a deep learning model, you have a letter representation that can inform a sentence representation, whether or not they are grammatical, that would be false, because words needs to be in the equation. So not sure I'm able to model this one. So we will see. This one is a bit complex. So we wanted to know if there is the contribution of letter identification within words, whether they are presented centrally or in the peripheral vision. So there is percept that is, well, there is a sentence that is displayed in the middle of a screen. The participants see here the central word. In his peripheral vision, there is two other words, and there is two tasks for this type of stimuli. The first task is that whether or not he recognizes if there are words on the left and on the right, or in the central position. Or the second task is that if the subject can identify letters within the words, so the 9 position of identification. And we've shown that here, this is the graph of identification of words with the probability correct on the vertical axis. And you can see that participants were more accurate in when they were asked to decide whether or not a word was displayed in the central position rather than in the left and right position. And when it came to the letter identification here, you can see that the outer letters are recognized at a higher level than the inner letters due to the famous crowding effect that we have seen earlier. The message here is that from this quite a bit complex graph here is that the Pearson R, that is the correlation level that is on the vertical axis here, is super high. Here, this is 0, the p-value, and it's super high for the left and right words, meaning that we only identify words in the parafoveal region by identifying correctly the letter. There is a high correlation between the identification of a letter in both words, left and right, and the identification of a word. So it's less true for the central word. So when we switch to acquisition now, the hierarchy of reading in reading acquisition, we did 2 experiments. So one participant did 2 tasks, the grammatical decision task that we spoke about already, GDT, and LDT, the lexical decision time, in 150 participants. Here, the manipulation is not the location, it is the duration of the stimuli. And the duration for the lexical decision time is modified here. And for the stimulus here, so lexical decision is cigale, so whether it is a word or not, and le bruit des cigales, whether it is a sentence or not. So this is the result of that we found, and it's a really nice set of results. I think this is the lexical decision task, and you can see that when the word is displayed for a longer time, there is an increase in the correct response rate, the probability, the percentage of correct response. And there is kind of a plateau effect, meaning that the more you increase the time of presentation, well, For sure, you cannot go up to 100%, so there is kind of a ceiling effect here. But it's true also for the, oh man, already, I forgot. I'm sorry. I forgot to speak about the different grade that is fundamental in the manipulation. So we did 150 participants, but in 3 groups. I forgot about the 3 groups. Sorry about that. And so there is a 7-year-old, there is the 9-year-old group, and there is an 11-year-old group. And that's fundamental in what I will say now, in the sense that for the 2 older group, there is a plateau effect, but there is no plateau effect here found in the 7-year-old, while so the 7-year-old just learn how to read. In the grammatical decision, it's even more striking, it's super nice, is that there is no plateau effect for the percentage of correct response for the group of 9 and 11 years old, but for the 7 years old, they respond at chance level. So meaning that they are, whether or not you increase the sentence presentation, they are not able to answer, is it grammatical or not? They answer by chance. So this one is super nice because we can see that there is no mental representation of sentences. There's no reading automaticity in a 7-year-old kid, child, whether on while on the at 9 and 11 there is an effect of presentation time. So the thing that we can infer, the fact is that the sentence level ability is acquired between 7 and 9 years old. So this is a view of the hierarchy reading acquisition. And the fact that there is no plateau here, it means that there is a long stage learning process that we all know about. And if we compare this result to the adult result, so no plateau effect, and with the adult result, still with the duration, the presentation duration, there is this one, this plateau. So after children learning to read in animals, so we did an experiment in a baboon population. So we had this particular setup in Marseille, France. We got a baboon colony, and they play with video games. So it's cognitive video games for sure. And here I wanted to know whether or not the baboons could learn the lexical decision, meaning that if you present a word or a non-word, if the baboon were able to respond on the right button to a word and on the left button to a non-word. So here is the hierarchy again, and the task that they were doing. So single printed stimuli, 2-button response. If they have a correct response, they got a little cereal, they're happy. Well, I guess they're happy because they tend to respond correctly, and they eat the cereals and then go again and again. The setting is there. So it's little booth, and baboons can go freely, play video games, going back and do their social life, and they play again. So they play a lot, and they do between 2,000 and 5,000 trials a day. It's quite a machine. Yeah, that's it. It's a machine. yeah. So, but this one is funny. So, and each point here, it's 2,000 trials. Okay, this one. So all are we have 6 baboons that did the learning phase, the test. You have the accuracy here on the vertical axis and the trial blocks on the horizontal axis. You can see at the beginning that all the baboons were responding, for example, only on the right, or only on the left button. And so they had half of the time a cereal. And then after 2,000 and probably after 4,000 trials here, they started to respond correctly. So, and at a super high level, because for word accuracy, they were well above chance. And Dan, for example, our best baboon, managed to learn 300 words, so which is quite a lot. Words also, and reading also like that, because it's not reading and it's not actually word, it's just a visual percept. And the non-word accuracy also were good and far above the chance level. And probably what is of interest here is that the non-word accuracy is going down, is cyclic. So you got high performance, then a low one, then a high one, then a low. So it goes like this. So we have not investigated that much, but it's an interesting fact. This is the measure of the D prime and the C prime, if you know about the signal theory. What is of interest here, it is nice, it is the wordness of the stimuli. So when you present a baboon a particular word, I would say like the word table that we spoke about earlier on, or crad even better. So crad is really similar to card. And so within the horizontal axis here, crad will be in this area, whether while on this area of the axis, the orthographic distance, you would find the words like CRZV, which is not at all a word, and it's far from I would say, the mean representation of a word. So we call that orthographic distance, 2 words. And you have a nice dependency of the accuracy on the vertical axis for non-words, meaning that the more the non-words resemble to the words, the less the accuracy was. And it was valid for all the baboons here. And the more the non-words were unique and didn't at all form part of a word, or were words or were similar to words, then the accuracy was higher. And you have the same effect blub, 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 here in humans. There is an orthographic distance, not the same axis, so watch out for that. Non-word accuracy on the vertical axis, and you got the same dependency on this orthographic orthographic distance. Another effect that is kind of nice, and I really like it. Here, how could I explain that? When we introduce a word for the first time, so the baboon we're seeing, for example, the word card for the first time, and for the baboon, card is a non-word. Well, it should be a non-word, so the answer would go on the left. It's a non-word, but actually, what we observed is that the first time the baboon faced a word, they were not responding at the same level than the mean of the non-words. So it's kind of intriguing, because our take from that is the fact that they learn dependencies between letters, frequency, like probability of joint probability. Let's say that joint probability between a single percept within a word, and they were able to, when the first time they see card, for example, they were able to extract the properties of card, CA, CR, CD, and so on, the famous open diagram, and they were able to respond word from time to time for these words. So they are not treated like non-words, and that's it. So speaking about representation, there are several ways to code for wordness. We have the famous open diagram that I spoke about, all the relation between CH, CU, CT here. Sometimes you have this W shape that form activation of the different unit of pair of letters. So this is a vector. And you can measure whatever with a vector. So you can measure the cosine similarity or whatever. So that's good. So you can have a good measure on your x-axis that we were speaking about. There is another way of measuring the distance. It's called the old 20. I will say that the old 20 measure, old 20 distance. This is based on the Levenshtein distance. So I'm not sure that it's just an edit distance, meaning that between chute and chat in Francais, there is one letter difference. And so there is a one substitution. The Levenshtein distance is one. And between caud, which is a non-word, and chat, which is a cat in French. And you got a substitution of one letter, insertion of letters, and deletion. And the Levenshtein distance is 3. So you got for each word the 20 most closed neighbor, I would say like that, and you do the mean of all this Levenshtein distance. And it's called Levenshtein distance. This is a standard way to measure wordness. So if you have another idea, please talk to me. It's nice to speak about that and to have new ideas on distances of orthographic representation. When you have these vectors, we spoke about the famous vector of open diagram vector, and you project them on a self-organizing map, like the Cohen network, then there is an unfold of all the orthographic properties. That is nice because you got a single entity at the beginning, and then there are plenty of points that appear on your map, and they appear for sure. It's the principle of Cohen based on the wordness, the quality of the distance between representation. And you have, for example, here, salut, saluer, which is high, like chaud, cuit with a C and CH, nat, pat, all the orthographic neighbor. So this is wordness in action. So another model that we published, but this one was still based on interactive activation. This one is at a feature level, letter level. So we do not speak about word anymore. We speak about letter level. So, and it's a bit weird, but it's fine. It's the only way that we managed to think about this experiment is that you present letters the way they are here to participants, and we collected electrophysiological signal on the scalp. You present letters and you present non-letters. And why did we choose this little weird font is that we can just cut easily the segment and recompose a percept, but without meaning this percept, so the non-letter. So all the letters at the mean level had the same number, for example, of features than the letter group. And we were interested here in a two component of the ERP. ERP stands for the event-related potential. Sorry for that. So this is little bar. Here you go. This little bar here represents the onset of the stimuli. And you got always, when you present something visually, an N1 P2 complex, which is called like that. N1 because the negativity are on at the upper part of the graph. This is a particularity. So N1 P2 complex, and you measure the top part of the N1, the bottom part of the P2. You have the distance between time between the N1 and the P2, and you have also the mean amplitude of the N1 P2. So you got a point in a 2D space to measure, and you got this measure for the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 14 letters. So this is the results that we tried to model. We used a model interactive activation. This is another formal way to present it. There are inhibitory and excitatory connection, alpha and gamma, between the two layers of representation. And we wanted to know whether or not modifying the alpha and the gamma in the layer, we had a group or a class of network that represented the N1P2 measurement correctly. So the modeling here of the letter A here. So when you present the letter A on the feature level, you have an activation of the. Yeah, it's time, no? I gotta skip that. But it's not that complex. I gotta finish it quickly. So this is, we've seen the activation of blur and blue. This is the activation of letter A and S. They are competitors too at the letter level. There are metrics that we represent here. I'm sorry to go super quick. The root mean square deviations at the latency level on the horizontal part. On the vertical part, the amplitude, so latency in milliseconds, amplitude in millivolt, and you have all the little model that we run, and we see that for a particular class, like when the model is fully connected, you got good representation. So probably the decision part, I'm gonna skip that. Just mention that there is a nice aspect of the decision. So the decision, it's we model that with a 2-node. It's a leaky competing accumulator. It's just like if you the drift diffusion model, just a bit like that, if you know about it. So you got the lexical input that is driving the right answer. So whether or not the lexical, the word that you see is truly a word, then the more you have evidence, it's evidence building. The more you have evidence for a word, the quicker and accurate you are at responding yes. And for the no, it's a little bit funny, because for no, there is no positive evidence. When you see a non-word, you don't know it's a non-word. So how do you build up evidence that it is a non-word? That was the question that was driving this research. It's kind of funny. So we find out that the only way to model all the different results that we had was to have positive evidence is a constant minus a lexical input. If you do another thing, it doesn't work. So it is based on a random walk, the leaky competing accumulator. And this is the matching we had between the experimental and the simulated RTs for different conditions. Simulated RTs on the vertical axis, experimental RTs for the horizontal axis with plenty of different conditions. And the only way to have these lines, these points and mean condition aligned and well aligned is just to have what I talk about of the positive input for the non-words. So that's it. My big project now is to go for the grammatical decision, to model the grammatical decision. We don't know what happens when you present a word like blue sky. We don't know what happens in our brain. Is it a summation of blue and sky? Is it a mix between the two? Is the one prior to the other? It's unknown. 55, all good. Text simplification. Poor readers are slow readers with impaired comprehension. So sometimes diagnosed with dyslexia, and the prevalence of dyslexia in general population is 5%. And word decoding here, what I talked about earlier on, is there. Word decoding is fundamental in the comprehension of unwritten material, in the sense that if you do not know, like a person with dyslexia, how to decode a word, your comprehension is impaired. And comprehension is the product of general language skill and word decoding. And so to assess this little simple equation and the impact of simplification, so we simplified 20 texts by hand, not by that artificial neural network. So if you also want to simplify things automatically, you're welcome. So simplification meaning that we did lexicosyntactic simplification. We chose a simpler word and a simpler syntactic form. And so 20 text, literature, scientific, 20 sentences each. We built an ebook to measure the reading speed and the accuracy and responding comprehension question for each text. And we tested 165 children, 7 years old, so just starting their reading journey. And we measured for each child IQ test, IQ-like test, like whatever, the faster they can, the number of words they remember, so plenty of different measures. We measured with the iBook the reading fluency and the comprehension, as I mentioned. This is the way people think about the problem. So this is a paper by Lervag in 2018. Here you can see that the language is associated to all the skills that are measured in children. So this is the 10 tests that the children did out there. They are all related to language and listening comprehension. And you got the word decoding here at in this node. And both of the word decoding and the listening comprehension are linked to the reading comprehension. So just the same story that I talked earlier on, but this time is more formalized. Reading comprehension is a product of word recognition and listening comprehension. And here in this particular paper, they tested at 3 different times the children. And what you see here is the graph of a structural equation modeling. So this is my colleague Ludivine, who ran the test in school. So this is the iPad of the children, and this is the few picture of the iBooks. So the question point that is important, the questions are identical for original and simplified text. What we observed is that simplified texts are in black and original text are in gray, is that the reading speed for children, a minute, they are faster in reading text. So simplified texts are easier to read, and you are better at understanding them, in the sense that still simplified in blue here, the proportion of correct response on the question of comprehension, and you got a far better and significant effect of simplification on comprehension. And the comprehension is quite deep because you got 2 types of question. You got the inference type of question and retrieval. And the inference type is, so you're not aware, well, you don't know the contents of the question. This one, yeah, this effect of simplification, actually, when you do a PCA of the famous 10 tests that the child had, the first component that pops up is the reading ability. And you have this reading ability on the horizontal axis here, and you have the accuracy on the vertical axis. And you can see when you plot them that there is no effect of simplification for children that read really good, are really good at reading. And but for the poor readers, there's a strong effect of text simplification. And the text simplification that the effect of text simplification that we've seen is driven by this pool of participants. So here we go. To sum up, and you can read. Thank you.
So that has just scratched the surface of a massive field of research about how children learn language, about how humans have actually learnt language and how we actually use it. And the question for you, the audience, is how that affects your work. I just want to give one example. When I, in my PhD in 1980, developed a self-organizing system, self-learning, unsupervised system for learning a grammar, I was really disappointed that the first classes that came out were things like the, my, that, and of, in, and things like that. And it was a psycholinguist at my conference talk that pointed out, well, back in 1890, Huey, with eye reading, eye tracking stuff, showed that children or readers skipped from one closed class, one functional word like that to the next. And that's how they chunked things and these sorts of things. That's where I first got exposed to this sort of thing, because it actually changed my expectations of my unsupervised learning work. And so, and this last bit about simplified language, we think that talking down to children and breaking things up and being ungrammatical when talking to foreigners and leaving out words makes things easier. It makes things harder. You want to have grammatical sentences, but simpler. Leave out the adverbs and the extraneous stuff and the that clauses, but keep them as actual really grammatical sentences. Otherwise you make things worse rather than better. So there's all sorts of things that, all sorts of implications that this has. And talk to Stephane over the dinner about how the sort of things he's looking at might affect the strange things that you're finding in your research. So we have got time to talk and ask some questions. Now it's after 6 o'clock. The building will probably not like you anymore. So you might need someone inside to press a green button if you get out and want to get back in again. So feel free to use the toilets behind the lifts and things. We're then just going to go out towards South Road and down left a block down to the place where we've got our dinner.
Thank you so much.